Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. In a major escalation, the Department of Justice has now sent 40 subpoenas to Trump allies in just the past week as part of its investigation into the attempted coup and the insurrection. The New York Times reports the DOJ also seized cell phones from two of Trump's coup plotting aides, Boris Epshteyn and Mike Roman. Now, Mike Roman might feel a little remote in your memory. There's a lot of characters here. He was actually the director of Trump's 2020 Election Day operations. And crucially, according to the reporting we have, he reportedly hand-delivered slates of fake electors to Congress as part of Trump's attempted coup. In addition to his own role in the fake elector scheme, Boris Epshteyn was also a point person between the White House and John Eastman. John Eastman, of course, the Trump lawyer who wrote the coup memo, which essentially called for then Vice President Mike Pence to throw out the results of the 2020 election. Eastman also has had his phone seized by the feds. We're also learning that former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, a guy who promoted a number of ludicrous false election fraud claims, he was there at the infamous landscaping press event. He was subpoenaed today, along with Trump's social media director and advisor, Dan Scavino. Now, when reports of a new series of DOJ subpoenas first broke last week, it appeared as though, and we reported on this program, they were largely related to shady fundraising tactics by the Trump campaign, right? Trump campaign sets up a super PAC, raises $250 million for legal challenges for a fund that never even existed. But now we've got the sort of full picture of all of the subpoenas that has been sent out, at least the ones we can track. The latest revelations revealed the investigation may be more closely linked to the larger investigation into the attempted coup itself and to January 6th than we first thought. And while all this is happening, Trump apparently himself is lounging around his golf course today. This is just the latest example of the ex-president avoiding accountability while those around him face legal consequences. We are seeing this play out with former Trump attorneys. We're basically left with two options, both of which we see unfold in real time. So the first is to do a kind of desperate public dance where now that you're no longer employed by Trump, you try to distance yourself from his obvious misdeeds. We've seen this with Trump White House counsel Pat Cipollone, who, remember, we first met publicly, right? First public-facing role, public prominence as the face of Trump's defense during his first impeachment trial. How dare you impeach this guy? Leave it to the people. He has now publicly debunked Trump's big lie of a stolen election as part of his 8 hours of testimony to the January 6th committee.
There was a real question in my mind and a real concern, particularly after the Attorney General had reached the conclusion that there wasn't sufficient election fraud to change the outcome of the election. When other people kept suggesting that there was, the answer is, what is it? And at some point, you have to put up or shut up. That was my view.
Pretty chesty talk there from Pat Cipollone in the relative quiet of the deposition room. Now, another Trump White House lawyer, you remember this guy? His name's Ty Cobb. He was brought on around the time during the Mueller stuff. Now, he recently told CBS News he thinks Trump will be indicted, and get this, that Trump should be disqualified from running again.
What do you think the possibilities are of an indictment of former President Trump?
I think they're very high. It was popular early on, but the fact that it's been delayed and delayed when we could, easily modify the conversation by disqualifying him now, whether he gets prosecuted or not, I find sad.
And there's Trump Attorney General Bill Barr, who misled the public on the Mueller report and enabled many of Trump's worst impulses. Barr clearly sees which way the wind is blowing. He is now attempting to rebrand himself as something of a prominent Trump critic, appearing on Fox News multiple times a week to declare that the ex-president broke the law.
I think that the fundamental dynamics of the case are set, which is the government has very strong evidence of what it really needs to determine whether charges are appropriate, which is government documents were taken, classified information was taken and not handled appropriately, and they are looking into, and there's some evidence to suggest that they were deceived.
So that is one strategy former Trump lawyers can take. The other is just lawyer up themselves. That's particularly relevant if you're currently advising or representing the ex-president. As the New York Times put it this weekend, quote, a dark joke has begun circulating among lawyers following the many legal travails of former President Trump. MAGA actually stands for making attorneys get attorneys. One of Trump's most recent attorneys, a woman named Christina Bobb, who he apparently hired because he admired her work as a TV pundit, has now retained legal counsel of her own, per the New York Times. You see, Bobb reportedly signed a letter back in June claiming that she and other lawyers had conducted a thorough search of Mar-a-Lago and that no classified documents remained on the premises to the best of their knowledge. Something the FBI would later determine was not true when they executed that search warrant on Trump's property last month and seized 100 more classified documents, including some marked top secret and at least one reportedly related to nuclear secrets. Trump's coup plotting lawyers are also in some hot water. Trump's leading lawyer in his attempt to overturn the 2020 election, Rudy Giuliani, is now the target of the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney's investigation into election interference. He has been notified that he's a target of that criminal probe by the district attorney's office. That investigation in Fulton County may also be widening to include another Trump coup lawyer, Sidney Powell, who's now facing scrutiny for her role in an alleged scheme to steal election data. Remember, she hired that firm that went into one county's election offices and apparently took a bunch of data. The Department of Justice has also seized cell phones from John Eastman, that's the coup lawyer I mentioned a moment ago, and Jeffrey Clark, former Trump DOJ official, as part of its investigation into the attempted coup and the insurrection that followed. That DOJ investigation is running parallel to the House committee investigating January 6th, which is now set to resume its public hearings later this month. The committee reportedly considering whether to request testimony from Mike Pence or even from Trump himself. While the committee cannot bring criminal charges itself, it can make referrals to and share information with the DOJ, which has already demonstrated it is following the committee's findings closely.